Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. Hey, what's going on, everybody? So today we're going to go back to the vault and pull out another article. This article is from July 12th of 2019, and it's from the New York Post. It has to do with Jeffrey Epstein and the amount of money that he was spending to influence potential witnesses. We talked a little bit about this last night when we were talking about who went and visited him in jail, and I was talking about how his personal assistants, were making way more money than any other personal assistants, even on Wall Street. And the reason for that was it wasn't because Jeffrey Epstein was a nice guy, or he wanted to pay them a little bit of extra money to make their lives better, or that they were just so good at their jobs that he had to give them so much more money than all of the other assistants on Wall Street. Nope, it had nothing to do with any of that. It had to do with buying their silence. It had to do with making sure that they had funds so they did not rat him out. And that was all part of the layer upon layer that he built within this operation. So today we're going to talk a little bit more about that, and we're going to see who this article is talking about. So like I said, this is from the New York Post. The author is Andrew Denny, and this article was produced on July 12th of 2019. Millionaire convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein has already tried to buy the silence of two potential witnesses against him, Manhattan prosecutors charged Friday. Yeah, that's his MO. When you have that kind of money, that's what you do. You spread it around. You try and help yourself to be insulated when the fall comes. And does it always work? No, it certainly does not always work. But Jeffrey Epstein had another aspect to all of this. Not only was he providing them money, and not only were they employees, they were all part of his sex cult as well. And he had them all wrapped around his finger. The former hedge fund manager, who was arrested last week on child sex trafficking charges, doled out a total of at least $350,000 to two people last year, federal prosecutors said in new court papers. The money, $250,000 in one case and $100,000 in the other, was secretly funneled to the potential witnesses identified in the documents as possible co-conspirators. At around the same time, the Miami Herald unleashed a series of exposés about the perverted financier, the Feds said. Wow. So, two people, co-conspirators. We can only be left to wonder who they might be. So, here are our list of suspects. Sarah Kellen Vickers, Leslie Groff, Adriana Ross, Nadia Marcinkova, and Ghislaine Maxwell. Those would be the five top choices in my opinion. I'm sure that there might be some others, but those are the top five where I'm guessing that this money went to. The person who was wired the $250,000 was identified as one of the defendant's employees. Yeah, well, there you go. We know that. We know that he was paying hush money to his employees. We know he was paying hush money to people like Leslie Groff and Adriana Ross. We know that. That's been established. There's no way that those gals were making $200,000 a year to be personal assistants. So with the four of them around him, he was doling out $800,000 to his assistants, people to answer phones, people to set up meetings. Come on, really? On what planet is that normal? That doesn't happen. That's a job where those people are probably making $75,000, $80,000, $90,000, maybe $100,000 with incentives and whatnot. They're not making $200,000 a year to answer phones, okay? That's insane. Neither of these payments appears to be recurring or repeating during the approximately 5 years of bank records available to the government, the document said. This course of action, and in particular its timing, suggests the defendant was attempting to further influence co-conspirators who might provide information against him. Well, yeah, that's cool. The prosecutors are coming out and saying that, and they're realizing what's going on. But what's going on now is the real question. Epstein's dead. There's nobody left to funnel money to these girls. Why aren't you arresting them? Why aren't you kicking in the doors? Don't act like you're going after the co-conspirators. Don't say, oh, well, the co-conspirators shouldn't sleep easy, when we haven't seen one iota of movement towards bringing any of them to justice. And Epstein's efforts to influence witnesses continue to this day, the prosecutors added. So they had him for witness tampering, and the people and the witnesses who received the money, why aren't they under scrutiny? Are they being followed? Is there an investigation cracked off into them? How about, again, a forensic accountant tracing that money? Where did the money come from that Jeffrey Epstein funneled to them? The feds pointed to an allegation that Epstein, whose fortune was estimated at $500 million in court papers, tried to pay off one of his victims to keep her quiet during a 2006 investigation into his pedophilia. Yeah, he always tried to do this. He's one of these people, again, one of these people from polite New York society who thinks that their money makes it okay for them to act any way they want and to treat people any way they feel that they should treat them. And if he stepped out of line, that's okay. He'd spread a little dough around to the poor subjects around him. And then everything would go away. And it's not just Jeffrey Epstein, folks. I hate to break the news to you. That's just how the world works. If you have money, if you have a bunch of racks, well, you're more than likely you're going to get off with whatever crime you commit. The prosecutors cite a police report from Palm Beach County, Florida, that states that an associate of Epstein tracked down the young woman while she was home from college on spring break, telling her that Epstein would pay for her silence. Who's this associate? Can we have names? This is what I'm talking about, and this is why the documents from Preska's court need to be released as well. They're associate, unnamed partner, etc., etc. We can't have that anymore. All of these people need to be exposed for their role within this enterprise. All of these people need to be called upon the carpet, and they have to answer questions. They don't get to skate by because they have fat bank accounts. They don't get to skate by because they're hanging out with politicians or powerful people. That's not how this works. That's not how any of this is supposed to work. The Epstein associate told the girl, those who help him will be compensated, and those who hurt him will be dealt with accordingly. Imagine? These are the kind of people that Jeffrey Epstein would send out after he abused these girls, after they had survived his abuse. He would send out his quote-unquote associate, whoever that is, to tell them if they don't play ball that they're going to be in big trouble. They'll be hurt and dealt with. That's pretty open-ended. What does that mean? Is he threatening their lives? That's a felony. He can't threaten them. That's a criminalistic threat. So where are the prosecutors with that? Who's the associate that went and passed on that message? Shouldn't that person be held accountable for their actions and for what they're doing for Jeffrey Epstein? But no. All we see so far, the two guards from MCC, they're the only ones that are in trouble. And again we see it. The two-tiered justice system right in front of our faces. In another Palm Beach police report, one of Epstein's survivors told police that he had hired private investigators who were terrorizing her family, in one case driving one of her parents off the road during a car pursuit. You see, this is the kind of stuff that really gets me upset. And I really hope that would happen to me. I wish somebody would try that shit with me, because I would go absolutely crazy. The intimidation of reporters is such a joke. The intimidation of these people is an even bigger joke. How do the police let this occur? Not only have these girls been abused by Epstein on the first time around, the second time around, third time around, whatever it may be, but after the fact, their families are being terrorized, family members being run off of the road even. And there's no arrests, there's no associates that are brought in for questioning, there's no deeper dive, there's no harder look. What is going on, Mr. Berman? I have news for you. If that was me and some maniac ran my family off the road and I was in the vehicle with them, forget it. I'd end up in jail. I would 100% without a question end up in jail, because there would be an extraction from that vehicle. And to be honest with you, if I was one of these girls' parents, I would have probably kicked in El Brio Way's door and went looking for Epstein myself. Because if you're a tax-paying citizen, right? You're a good person. You lived your life the right way your whole entire life. You never broke the rules, committed felonies, anything like that. And any time that you've gotten a parking ticket, you've stood up and you've answered for what you have done. And now you sit here and you see that your daughter has been assaulted by Jeffrey Epstein. And not only was your daughter assaulted, now your family's being harassed as well. You're being harassed. You're being driven off the road by some maniac. And the police aren't doing anything about it. What do you do at that point? I mean, I saw the movie Law Abiding Citizen. And I'll tell you what, that might be where I would be at, honestly, if this was my daughter. So Jeffrey Epstein's, honestly, he's lucky that none of these parents ever took vigilante justice on him, because this is the sort of case where you see that kind of thing, right? And could you really blame the parents? They got screwed by the prosecution. Jeffrey Epstein obviously devastated their child's lives, and you as a parent, you're sitting there saying to yourself, all right, where do I turn? What do I do now? So Epstein's lucky nobody ever kicked in his door. Because I have news for you. If it was me and it was my daughter, boy, you wouldn't have to worry about the police, my friend. I promise you that. Details of the alleged payoffs and harassment surfaced as prosecutors insisted that Epstein should continue to be held without bail. And that was the right decision, by the way. He should have never had bail. This guy's a repeat offender, the whole nine. He should have never had bail. He is currently at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Lower Manhattan, 3 cell doors down from drug kingpin Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, awaiting another bail hearing next week. That's another thing we really haven't talked about, the fact that El Chapo was a couple of doors down from Jeffrey Epstein. So you mean to tell me that the cameras that were watching El Chapo as well as Jeffrey Epstein, and now mind you, El Chapo was a proficient and prolific escape artist. You mean to tell me that those cameras weren't working, huh? Okay, sure, I believe you. I mean, you're so credible over at the Department of Corrections and in the Justice Department that I just believe you. I don't have to do my own research. I don't have to look at none of the facts, none of it. Just your word is enough. Said nobody ever. So El Chapo was hanging out 2 doors down from Jeffrey Epstein, and cameras don't work all of a sudden, huh? Makes a whole lot of sense. The 2 most prized possessions in your whole entire facility, and you're going to tell me the cameras didn't work? Okay. In the court papers filed Friday, prosecutors argued Epstein should not be released, in part because his primary residence in the United States is a private island in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Well, that's a part of it, I guess, but the real issue is the guy is a prolific sex trafficker and child molester, okay? There should have been no discussions of bail, not even a conversation. This man should have been put under the prison while he awaited trial even. In fact, I'll take it a step further. We should have put him in one of those black sites that his buddies in the CIA love so much, and we should have let the parents of all of the girls who were abused by him come over and waterboard him for a little while. That would have been fun, huh? The defendant's primary residence is a private island in the U.S. Virgin Islands, a place where any sort of meaningful supervision would be all but impossible, they wrote. Of course it would be, because, as we stated last night, the politicians in the Virgin Islands were on the dole. They were all taking bribes from this guy. Are you kidding me right now? They were wetting their beak, and then they tried to try and wet their beak on the back end as well. Woo! Talk about getting my blood pressure raised. It's absolutely ridiculous. The Virgin Islands is a ridiculous place, obviously. The island is near the tropical community of St. Thomas, where locals never welcomed the pervy billionaire anyway. Everybody called it Pedophile Island, Kevin Goodrich, a charter boat operator from St. Thomas, said. It's our dark corner, he added. Oh, everybody called it Pedophile Island, huh, Denise George? So you mean to tell me that your predecessors had no idea what was going on, huh? But this boat captain sure called it Pedophile Island. These people that lived around there sure called it Pedophile Island. But none of the authorities knew, none of the elected officials knew, and you expect us to believe that. We don't believe that, happy crappy man. Nobody believes that. That's BS. Epstein's island features a stone mansion with a turquoise-colored roof, as well as several other structures. There was also a maid's quarters and another square-shaped mansion that features a gold dome. Workers believe the temple-like structure was used as a music room and was built with acoustic walls. I don't have any information to add to any of that. I don't have concrete information one way or the other about what that temple was used for, but I will tell you this. There's a lot of symbolism with that temple and with a lot of things that Jeffrey Epstein was up to. There's definitely a lot of symbolism there, and I'm not qualified to really delve deep into that aspect of this case, but it's something that I've started looking into, and that's the whole entire symbolism aspect of this. So I'm trying to educate myself further on all of that, so I don't want to speak out too much on that right now because I want to make sure I know what I'm talking about before I bring it here to the podcast. Like every other thing I talk about here, I want to make sure I'm not bumbling around like a moron. So the occult aspect of this, I have not really delved too deep into, but the symbolism is obvious. When you start looking at the symbolism of some of the structures he had and some of the other things on his properties, there's a lot of symbolism there, folks. A lot of it. Epstein's former employees on the island described an odd working environment to Bloomberg News, including that they were not supposed to be seen by the pedophile billionaire when he was there. He tried to act like he was royalty. Epstein tried to act like he was royalty, like his buddy Prince Andrew. He tried to make it so when his workers would see him, they didn't associate with him. I'm sure they had to like look down, and he tried to make it like he was some kind of prince or some kind of king or something. When in reality, we know he's the prince of nothing, the king of less. One of the former workers told Bloomberg that he remembers two closely guarded security boxes in the main residence. One, a steel safe in Epstein's office, was protected by a level of security that suggested it contained much more than just money, the worker remembered. Oh, I'm sure it did. I'm sure it contained all sorts of thumb drives and files and pictures and CD-ROMs and you name it. You name it. I'm sure it had all kinds of crazy stuff. Because like serial killers, Jeffrey Epstein was the kind of pedophile that had to take a trophy. And those trophies were videos and pictures, etc., etc. Whereas you have serial killers, when they murder somebody, they'll take a piece of clothing, maybe an earring, something like that. And Epstein was the same kind of cat. While he wasn't murdering these girls, we don't think or know, he definitely was taking trophies. This man had all of the characteristics of an absolute sociopath. Epstein's lawyers have offered to put up his $77,021,000 square foot Upper East Side townhouse where the feds say he sexually abused minor girls and kept a trove of suspected child porn, and his private plane as collateral if he gets bail. Reading back on that, the gall of these lawyers to even think that this guy was going to get bail, to even think that anybody was going to acquiesce to that to that request. That was never going to occur. Zero chance he was getting bail. Zero chance he was getting out. This guy was really going up the river this time because, like I said earlier, his intelligence contacts and his intelligence protection bailed on him after the second arrest. They knew that a second time wasn't going to be able to happen. They knew that they weren't going to be able to get him off again. So he got abandoned by the intelligence apparatus, in my opinion, and he had zero chance of beating the second case. Epstein is even willing to pay for around-the-clock armed security to keep an eye on him, his lawyers said. Epstein's lawyers did not return messages seeking comment. Again, with the money, he's going to pay for people to protect him, so he has armed security around at all times. No, you're in jail, dude. You're going to be treated like everybody else. And if it was up to me, I would have dropped you right on the main line. I would have put you in general population. Forget Nicholas Tartaglione. I would have dropped you in right with whoever the baddest dudes in the prison were. That's exactly the tier you would have been on. That's the car you would have been riding. And whatever happened to you, hey, it would have happened to you. That's fate. You would have had zero protection if I was in charge. None of these people would ever get any sort of special protections. You're the one who molested those girls. You're the one who abused them. You're the one who raped them. So, face the consequences, sir. Go ahead and enjoy that jail cell. Go ahead and enjoy that jail cell with those hardened criminals who don't take kindly to people like you. I think they call people like you chomos in the pen, my friend. And that's exactly what I would have done to Epstein. If I was in charge of the prison, I would have made sure, obviously, I kept the guy alive so he could have testified. And then after that, I would have dropped him right in the main line and let nature take its course. Because that's what he deserved. He didn't deserve to be put in some kind of solitary confinement cell or to be protected in the shoe or anything like that. This man deserved to be treated just like any one of us would have been treated, like any other sick, disgusting pedophile would be treated, and drop him right in the main line and let him go about his life in the yard. I say that's a proper punishment for him. It would have been nice, right? It would have been nice to see it through, to see him get arrested, and to see all of that occur. Unfortunately, the morons at the Department of Corrections and the idiots at the Justice Department who oversee the whole entire shebang couldn't even follow through with the small task of keeping him alive so that he could be faced by the survivors and after face the justice that he so deserved. So now that he's gone, all that's left are the co-conspirators. And their time is coming. Like I say all the time, folks, and like you know what the deal is in the year 2020. This is the year that the predator turns into the prey. All right, folks, if you'd like to contact me, you can do that at Bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. Also, I will be on the Prince and the Pervert podcast today. So, you'll be able to find it in any of the podcast markets, etc., etc. I'm also going to leave a link for the podcast here inside of the description box of this episode, so you can go check out their podcast and see what the ladies are up to if you have not checked it out already. Jen and Lisa are fantastic, two journalists from Australia who have been covering this case for quite some time now. And they're going to talk to me about my trip to Santa Fe, about what caused me to get involved in the Jeffrey Epstein case, and just, a whole entire range of questions that have to do with what we discuss every day on this podcast. So I'm pumped up for that. I'm really excited to do that. I'm really excited to talk to the people in Australia. I have fantastic listeners from Australia. Like 13% of my listeners are from Australia. So it's kind of nice to be able to go and speak to them directly on a podcast that's hosted by their fellow Australians. So I'm really pumped to do that and speak to those fans directly over in Australia, and hopefully talk to some fans that might not have, some fans of theirs that might not have heard my podcast. So it's fun. I'm looking forward to that. Really pumped up to do that. And so that's on the agenda for today. And also, the COVID-19 podcast will be out today. Very soon, folks. The link for that you can find at the Perfect Blue Studios website on Spreaker. You can go and click on the Jeffrey Epstein show, and it'll take you right to the Perfect Blue Studio page, and you can click on the link for the COVID-19 podcast. All right, everybody, I hope you all have a fantastic day, and I will speak to you all later on.